Welcome to this week's Bulldog Breakdown. Buck Bellew and Hudson Mason. Let's look back at the Georgia Tech game. Not much of a game, really. Tech's got a lot of ground to make up to make this really competitive rivalry again. This Georgia defense just went out and dominated last Saturday.
Yeah, they did. Defense played good. It was a bit sloppy on offense. I thought going into last week, I knew that Georgia was just by far and away, like you said, just way more talented. And this was the 82nd worst defense in the country for Georgia Tech. So 52-7. I think, in my opinion, I'd be a little cautious about withdrawing a ton of conclusions and thinking that all the offensive problems are fixed going into the SEC championship game just because you scored 52 points. We saw the ball put on the ground a couple times, a couple throws that probably should have been picked off. So I think Georgia still has their hands full when it comes to finding and putting together a game plan that is going to be able to beat LSU.
All right, well, let's talk about the positive then. The defense, you allow 7 points to Tech, and that was after a fumbled punt that gave them a short field, I think like 15 yards or something to get to the 7. Tech 3 for 17 on third down, less than 100 yards rushing, 11 3-and-outs for this Georgia defense, and they're going to need to play well this coming week here in Atlanta against LSU. Offensively, you mentioned a little bit of a slow start. Jake missed a couple of guys early. And now this is the fourth consecutive game Fromm has completed less than 50% of his passes. But when I hear that, I like to point out, but he also has 10 touchdowns and no interceptions in that same time frame. Receiver, we're really thin right now at receiver with Cager down for what looks to be the season, obviously. And then Pickens and the shenanigans he got caught up with in the Tech game against Trey Swilling. What'd you make of the fight?
Well, I mean, obviously, it was a dumb decision by Pickens. I think it's easier said than done, when you're in the middle of something like that. When somebody's
it's an intense game.
Yeah, it is. And somebody's kind of taking blows at you. I think it's easier said than done to tell a kid to say, hey, you got to restrain from that. But it is what it is, and he made that decision, and he's going to have to deal with the consequences, which is a first-half suspension. And you're right. I mean, it hurts his team tremendously because Cager's out, and he was your next, go-to receiver, and he's out for the first half. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy like Eli Wolf, Tyler Simmons, I guess, being Jake's go-to target in the first half for the LSU game. So, I think they're going to need to run the ball really well. I think Swift's all right. I think.
What makes you think that?
2 fumbles in a row. I think, to me...
You know what I don't like is he's carrying the ball in the wrong arm
hand
a lot of the time, and we've seen it all year, running to the left. They teach you in youth league football, you carry the football on the left, allows you to protect yourself with that stiff arm. Did not do that, coughed up the ball twice.
Yeah, some of the fundamentals. I think he was milking the injury a little bit. I expect him to go Saturday. I think he was just a bit embarrassed that he had 2 fumbles.
Wow. I do believe Georgia's in pretty good shape, and we'll talk about it in the next segment. If Swift is less than 100%, can't go, Georgia's set up as well as anybody in the country as far as quality depth goes at the running back spot. So Bulldogs take care of the Jackets 52-7, worst beating in the history of old-fashioned hate. But like Kirby did, let's turn the page. Let's take a look ahead to the SEC championship game against LSU. Coming back on the other side with that. Be a part of radio history here in Atlanta by securing the 680 The Fan 25th Anniversary Retro T-shirt, like Hudson Mason and I are wearing right now.
Great thing is all proceeds will go to a great cause. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, all the great folks over there will benefit from it. You can get your shirt and hat, trucker hat. That's always great for the summertime. 680thefan.com/retro buck. People may get that confused with Metro because we're going to look so good in it.
Don't fool around. Do it now and be looking good. For the third straight year, Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are back in the SEC championship game. Right now, they're 1-1. In the big game this year, they take on a little bit of a surprise team in LSU. They look like the best team in college football right now coming out of the SEC. So gigantic matchup in this game. Let's talk about the premier matchup in this game. You've got LSU's offense, best in college football. You got Georgia's defense, best in college football. What do you make of this particular side of the ball, the matchup?
Well, I think obviously the passing game is the part that gets talked about the most, and rightfully so for LSU. But don't sleep on the running back for LSU, Edwards-Helaire. 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns. We know how good DeAndre Swift has been. Those numbers are even better than Swift's numbers, and we know Georgia loves to run the ball. So they're not as one-dimensional as you think, and they're putting up gaudy numbers in the passing game, but Georgia's going to have their hands full to stop the run as well. Offensive line, I think, is good. They've got a ton of upperclassmen. So I think for me, you know, the phrase that defense win championships, that's been true for a long time. I think that's going to be put to the test. That old football adage is going to be put to this test this Saturday because, you know, you're going to be leaning along that defense to basically win you the game.
I never really fell for that phrase there. I always thought good teams win championships, solid teams across the board. Georgia's defense, to me, I think the magic number's 30. You got to, if you allow LSU to score 30 plus, I see us with a hard time finding a way to win. I do believe Georgia, their front seven, deep and fast and talented and athletic. I think they do a good job against Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the LSU run back. I can see that happening there. The big challenge to me is limiting LSU's passing game big plays, the plays over 20 yards. And Jamar Chase has been the big play man this year. It seems every single game he's got a touchdown or a big play over 40 or 50 yards in the game. So how do we play it coverage-wise? Are we playing two high safeties, trying to prevent the big play? Or do you come after, mix it up, and play a little more man?
I think you got to mix it up. If you sit in the same defense over and over again, Burrow is extremely accurate. His worst game this year from completion percentage is 70%. It's his worst day at the office. So if you're showing him the same look bug over and over, and you're not lining up in different places, disguising, he knows where to go with the football. So I think Kirby's got to have a lot of different looks. You know, I think he's got to change the pre-snap look and then the post-snap look. When he catches that ball in the shotgun and looks back up, it's got to be a different picture to him because I think you got to confuse him and hopefully steal a couple possessions with a turnover or something.
You got Daniel and Stokes on the outside with Campbell playing some there. You're in good shape outside cornerback. The inside cornerbacks, you're going to see Mark Webb and Devad Wilson. Georgia's got a lot of confidence in them as far as defending the RPO, the run-pass option, which LSU does as well as anybody. Yeah. Georgia's feeling really good about Webb and Wilson working on the inside. Let's flip it around on the other side. So Georgia's offense, not real impressive when you look at the big picture here this season. LSU's defense, not always very impressive either. But this might be the side of the ball the game's really decided.
Yeah, and look, I said earlier, I expect DeAndre Swift to be able to go. I think he's healthy. I think he's fine. But let's just say he's not. Let's say that shoulder is banged up and, you know, he can't lower his shoulder and make contact. Now you're starting to talk about some of the extra backup running backs like Brian Herrien, Zamir White, who we haven't seen a lot this year. And, you know, they are as loaded and with depth at that position as anybody else in the country. So they should be pretty good to go in a situation like this. That's why Kirby's recruited these guys. So I'm not as concerned with the backup running backs as I am just the story all season. Who are you going to go to in a predictable passing situation? Yeah. That's my concern because I know this LSU defense has been knocked on a lot because they've been giving up a ton of yards.
And big plays.
They're not as bad as the media has made them out to be. They're not. They're not Oklahoma's defense from last year that was second to last in the country. This is still a defense with the number one safety in the NFL that'll go next year in the draft, and Grant Delpit. They got good players, so it's not going to be one of those things where you just show up and Georgia's going to be able to score 30 points against an LSU defense.
Right. I think Zamir White is a guy that could be a breakout star in this game if Swift is limited or doesn't go or doesn't work out that way. I think Zamir White's a guy that's been waiting on a big opportunity. He's like the top-rated player in the country 2 recruiting classes ago, and I think he's a guy that's laying in the weeds that could be a big star and a difference maker in this game. We'll see. I'm concerned like you are. This Georgia wide receiver core getting open against man-to-man coverage. They've got some really aggressive, talented cornerbacks that are going to take the easy stuff away. We saw Jake in Baton Rouge last season get in trouble holding the ball too long. Yeah. So I'm a little concerned about the passing game. It's got to be Simmons, right, that's going to step in the first half and fill the void. Fromm's got some confidence in him. He went away after the South Carolina interception in overtime, which was really on Simmons' back, not Fromm's. Right. And so he resurfaces now with a chance to make a little bit of a difference. Landers, I think Demetrius Robertson
He's gotta have a big game.
Is a guy that can get open in the middle of the field against man-to-man coverage.
Blaylock, the freshman's had a couple of good games recently. I mean, Blaylock and Demetrius Robertson, 2 guys that I think you're going to need to have really good first halves until George Pickens gets back.
I think we've got a good chance to play clean on offense, too. From and the experience of getting out of bad plays at the line of scrimmage, getting into good plays at the line of scrimmage. He'll manipulate the situation as well as it can be manipulated. I think, Hut, the biggest factor on both sides of the ball in this game is third down, where LSU leads the country offensively in third down conversions. Georgia on defense is really at the top of the list, preventing third down conversions. Georgia's defense has got to get Burrow and those guys off the field. And then on the other side, Georgia offensively needs to convert on a lot of third downs in this game to have a chance.
Yeah, they do. And I think if you're a Georgia fan going into halftime, if you're leading, obviously you'll be ecstatic. But if you're down, hopefully it's a one-score game. If you can go into halftime and feel like you're right in this thing, and then you're getting George Pickens in the second half, I think as a Georgia fan, that's what best case scenario is hopefully in the first half you play really good football and keep it close, and you go in and make some adjustments and get one of your best overall players back in the second half and try to go after the thing.
Hud, as far as motivation goes, I expect it to be a pro-Georgia crowd in MBS. You're going to have Kirby selling this team on being a big underdog. All the national prognosticators will be picking LSU in this game. A little bit of an edge going Georgia's way there. We'll come back next week and break down the SEC championship game and look forward to either the bowl game or the playoffs here on the Bulldog Breakdown.